is really gaining attention. And we should have this mindset of openness to different forms of knowledge, and to see how we can truly integrate different forms of science to have a holistic worldview. So Samuel Abimbola, he is the co-founder of the MRN space. He should be walking us through how this space was formed and what are our objectives. But then I can handle that until he access our meeting here. So the Mentoring Research Network is a vibrant grassroots initiative. And with this, I mean like we are organically formed, and we are not registered anywhere, but then we are sort of connected together, heart and mind, to have this common purpose of a research that is really representing Africa, the Global South, all our challenges that we understand, but then we need also to solve. So our mission is to nurture research capacity and facilities and facilitate knowledge exchange across various vital domains such as planetary health, environmental sustainability, but also climate change, traditional medicine, and pardon me, and indigenous knowledge systems. We have also several other topics on our list. You can check them out on the LinkedIn page. We have something like 20 fields to focus on in our research. We also recognize the importance of embracing holistic approaches in addressing the complex challenges confronting communities and policymakers worldwide. Our network was established under the umbrella of Africa Community of Planetary Partners for Health and Environment, ACOFI, in June 2021. And it was really interesting to try and communicate with diverse researchers from various backgrounds. And it was truly enriching to have this collective wisdom and perspectives shared together. We managed to publish a number of papers that integrate transdisciplinary research. Perhaps Habibullah can drop that in the chat box so that we can have like a discussion also on them related to the context of this topic that we are discussing today on ancient knowledge and emerging medicine. Also, we aspire to forge innovative solutions grounded in shared community values and adapted to diverse contexts. Our ethos revolves around collaboration and mutual support, aiming to cultivate new narratives and pragmatic strategies to address anthropocentrism while promoting human and planetary health. By highlighting the intricate interconnections underpinning these challenges, we strive to enhance meaningful research across the Global South and contribute to the well-being of both humanity and the planet for future generations to come. So this is about us and how we came together as a group. And our objectives are mainly to mentor early career researchers by promoting skills development and training in research methodologies and tools, to strengthen a collaborative network that includes researchers from diverse fields of scientific endeavors. And so we can create this transdisciplinary environment, and to advance the pressing solutions for pressing environmental and continental health issues. And this expands to the Global South, and also to execute research studies that integrates One Health, public health, planetary health approaches with an ecosystem and systems thinking approach. And we also aim to bridge indigenous knowledge, bridge the past, present, and future determinants of health, and finally, how to make this available for policymakers to take further decisions in health and in ecological scenarios. So our administrative team was built slowly. Samuel Abimbola, he is a master of public health. Vanessa Gois, she is the executive secretariat. She is from Brazil, and Samuel is from Nigeria. But now he's based in Cyprus, Institute of Water Research. And Tajuddin Yusuf is the executive research manager. And Habibullah is the executive research deputy, who will be together with Menzi conducting this meeting. So I shall stop here and return back to everyone attending. If you have any questions about who we are, or if you need any further information, our website is slowly building up. So bear with us, because we are trying to do everything, single-handed, and gain the experience. So it's also a privilege to gain experience in technicalities, and to feel that transdisciplinarity even extends to the technical approach also. Let me proceed with the idea of why we are choosing today's topic. So first of all, we have been pausing or having a break for 4 months. And then today, I'm really excited to continue our mission again, and have such a lovely audiences attending with us. Actually, as we gather to explore the intersection of traditional and modern medicine, it is essential to acknowledge the profound contribution of ancient Egyptian medicine, because it runs in my blood also, and I'm based in Cairo University, Egypt. So I always question myself, where is the curriculum of ancient Egyptian medicine in Cairo University? This is such a big question for me. So I decided to take on this journey to explore more, because I can see that Egypt itself is a microcosm of Africa's rich history of healing practices, and was not only foundational to the world of medicine, but has continued to shape it in ways that we must recognize today. So I wonder if you know this piece of information or not, but then long before Hippocrates took his celebrated oath, the ancient Egyptian physician swore secret prayers, and this was documented on the temples, that never do evil towards any person is something similar to do no harm, adopted in the Hippocratic oath. And so this deep intertwining of spiritual and physical healing in ancient Egyptology is something that we often overlook in modern medicine. And though it holds valuable lessons about holistic care, ancient Egyptians also, through their specialized practice, really inspired us with all the medical pepari, like Edwin Smith Piparis, Ypres Pipari, which was really specialized. Even we have a gynecological pepari and surgical pepari, all using techniques and remedies that really is valuable for our medical practice today. And so this speaks also to the power of herbal remedies, treatments crafted from plants and animal products, many of which are the foundation of modern pharmacology. And I think that Habibullah even can gloss over this idea that modern pharmacology is really foundational in herbal medicine. And so the understanding of natural medicine, which is essential for the balance of the body, mind, and spirit, is truly needed in today's medical practice, where the interconnectedness of mental, physical, and spiritual well-being need to be more highlighted. Indigenous knowledge rooted in traditions that were both scientific and spiritual must be disseminated in today's rapidly advancing medical landscape. If anything, it should be revived and honored as we seek to regain a more holistic approach to health. Then we should really focus on all the marginalized systems of health, like African, Chinese, and all the other indigenous knowledge systems. The practice of ancient medicine has a role in helping us understand the human body beyond mere biology, offering insights into the emotional and spiritual dimensions of healing. Menzi Masego, in his presentation, will delve in this further, exploring how these ancient practices can inform and enhance today's emerging medical paradigms. And with Habibullah moderating, you will be more than guided through the wealth of research papers that support and validate many of the already researched aspects of this profound legacy of indigenous knowledge system. So today, as we open the conversation, let's reflect on the idea that modern medicine's advancement does not mean we need to leave behind the wisdom of the past. Instead, we must fuse these ancient teachings with modern techniques to foster a more integrated approach to healing that can address the whole person, mind, body, and spirit. So thank you all for being with us in this vital dialogue. And let me pass it on to Samuel Abimbola, who will greet you all, and then Menzi will be sharing with us his presentation. After also Samuel reads the bio of Menzi and Habibullah. Back to you, Sam.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mona. It's a privilege to be here with everyone. Good evening to everyone in the house. I reckon you can hear me. Good, all right. So Dr. Mona already introduced me to some extent. My name is Samuel Abimbola. I'm a Nigerian doctorate researcher at the Cyprus International Institute for Environmental and Public Health. I'm also the co-director of the Mentoring Research Network under the wonderful guidance of Dr. Mona. It's a privilege to be here with everyone this evening to save ourselves Sorry? Okay.
You pressed mute by mistake there, brother. You've muted thyself.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was going to say that because I noticed I got a prompt. That's what I was trying to see. I got a prompt. My HD speaker just gave me a notification. So that's it. Thank you. And so I would introduce our guest speaker today, who is Menzi Maseko, and a wonderful brother in the spiritual realm. He's an Africologist, a knowledge activator, and the founder of the Great Ankh Works, which promotes creative articulation of indigenous knowledge systems. I got to meet Menzi virtually still. Hopefully one day we get to meet in person. I got to meet Menzi virtually in the Akofi space. We started working together. I had wonderful conversations, discussions on environmental sustainability, planetary health, and the place of indigenous knowledge systems in planetary health sustainability. And one of the things he's always advocated for is that beyond any scope of knowledge, we need to understand who we are as individuals. And that takes us back to the root of spirituality, the roots of our origin as humans and as Africans. And one of the things I very much love about the ideology of spirituality is when you look at it holistically, you get to realize that we as humans are but a components of the universe. We are not superior to any other component of the universe. And we should, as humans, try our very much possible best to live wholly. And to live wholly, it means to embrace our spirituality. And so again, back to Menzi, he's a member of the Mentoring Research Network and of ACOFI. He's an active translator, a communications specialist, a vibe selector, and a father of wonderful triplets. He's an aspiring farmer connected to the land. And of course, I believe almost everyone in this room would love to eat the produce of his land. And so, Menzi, you're welcome to this room. It's a privilege and a pleasure to have you with us this evening. How are you doing today? I think the table has turned. We can't hear you, but you're not muted. It seems that's a network glitch, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so
The speaker was working fine before. Now that I'm to speak, it doesn't work. But anyway, can you hear me now? We good?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right.
Great.
I was saying thank you everyone for being here with us. Thank you for sharing your time with us. It's a great opportunity to speak on this great topic. And thank you, Samuel. Thank you, Dr. Mona. And thank you, Habib. Where do I begin? I was telling Mona earlier that, wow, this is such a monumental topic. But I wanted to be as brief as possible. But you know, I think, am I just greeting now, or is Habib still going to speak? Because otherwise, I'm just getting in.
No, you just greet, just introduce yourself and just saying
Hi.
hello to the house.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, because I'm ready to go, as you can see. But
I know you are.
we're
we're waiting to hear you also.
we are
So
very happy to be here. We give thanks.
just a little bit more of putting you on hold. I would quickly introduce my brother also, who would be anchoring today's meeting, Habibullah Oladipo. When I call him my brother, our paths have crossed more than twice. We met first in Ilorin, Kwara State, Nigeria, as co-undergraduates at the University of Ilorin, where we had our first degrees. And then our paths diverged, and I went in a different direction, he went in a different direction, but fate isn't done with us, yes, it appears. And then our paths were brought together again, and we met once again under the umbrella of the Mentoring Research Network and in their coffee community. And I was wowed when I saw him in the room one afternoon and we're having a meeting just like this. And I said, that face looks familiar. And just before I let the cat out of the bag, he said the same thing. And I was like, oh, I think I know you from somewhere. And so Habib holds a dual degree in microbiology and pharmacy from the University of Ilorin, as I mentioned. He's very much traveled through a very rich educational journey, which has underscored his unwavering commitment to advancing public health knowledge and catalyzing positive change. His dual degree path exemplifies his dedication to the pursuit of holistic solutions. He's one of the administrators in the MRN, and he's played a very important, a very significant role in reviewing and organizing our research studies that are very often pivotal to public health conversations in the global south, especially in Africa. He's also a planetary health campus ambassador affiliated with the Planetary Health Alliance in the United States of America. And he looks forward to even doing more and more in his path as he travels through the journey of public health research. He's published quite a number of research articles. I've been privileged to publish a couple papers with him, and I can say without any iota of doubt that you're staring this evening into the eyes of a very, very brilliant researcher. Mr. Habib Oladipo, it's a pleasure to have you with us this evening.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome, and really appreciate that from you.
Maybe he muted himself too.
we can hardly hear you, Habib. You can adjust your volume, make it more.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Thank you so much, Samuel. Thank you so much, brother, for that wonderful introduction. I'm really humbled, and it has been nice. It's nice to be here. It has been nice going through the journey together and meeting up again at this forum. And I think our journey is we just continue to cross paths as we raise the bar. So thank you so much. I want to thank everyone who has taken their time to attend this session, and I hope that this session will be enlightening and insightful, and we should sit and watch out for this scintillating episode of this session. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Habib. And so, brother, I believe you're ready to go.
No, I need about 10 minutes, maybe 15. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Yeah.
All right, I would
So,
like to pass it on to Mr. Menzi Maseko.
all right. I'd like to start with this particular. Can everyone see what's on the screen? The start walking barefoot part. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Because I want to start there. And the reason I want to start here, I would like to start here, is because there is in modern times, I will speak for Southern Africans, especially Southern Africans who come from the townships like myself. We are fashionistas. We love fashion. We like Italian shoes. We like American sneakers and all these kinds of amazing, beautifully expensive, exquisite shoes. And it's okay to like those things, but in acquiring some of these things, we have tended to forget that there was a reason why for thousands of years, if not hundreds of thousands of years, human beings generally walked on foot. And if they went, and they would only wear shoes if they are going either to war or on a long journey. But on a general level, we would make sandals if we needed to go on a long journey. By the time you get to the other side of the journey or get back, the sandals have been worn out and finished. So I'm starting this by looking at this issue of wearing, walking barefoot. This figure here shows, if everyone can see the screen, shows you that under your foot, you contain almost every part of the body that you can conceive. Every part, every gland, from the pituitary gland to the colon, to the bladder, to the tailbone area, to the lower back, to the ankle, everything that you can think of on the upper body has its equivalent or has its corresponding part in under your foot. Now, I am not what do they call it? An anthro. You'll correct me, guys. There's a word for people who study this particular field.
Reflexology.
Excuse me.
Reflexology.
A reflexologist. I am not a reflexologist, but I have attended a week-long. I had attended a week-long class where people who are dealing with in traditional African medicine are introduced to this form of health. Ayurveda, we were introduced to Ayurveda, we were introduced to various types of holistic health systems. But what was more amazing was that almost everything that we were taught in that week-long class, I think it was 2015, the year 2015, it seemed like we had a word for everything we had an indigenous word or a Zulu word. I speak isiZulu language. We had an isiZulu word for each and everything that was being taught to us, which told us, and some of the elders that I was attending with, and some of the initiates that I was attending with. And at that time, I was an initiate into some of the traditional healing practices of my own tradition, right? So I was an initiate, but I was already working with elders because you have to apprentice. But without staying too long on this particular picture, I just want to say that a lot of the terms that become introduced to us are actually not new to us. They are only being reintroduced to us. So when the instructor or the facilitator was telling us about earthing, or grounding, we realized that, but we've been grounding without realizing that we are grounding. We've been doing this without realizing that we are doing it. It is only some of the initiates into certain orders of healing in our tradition that had been opened to some of these things. I'll give an example before we pass from this figure. There is some thing called ukugaba. So you're gonna note, please note that some of the words that I'm going to use are isiZulu words because I will translate some of them, but sometimes I don't have even though I'm a translator, sometimes I don't have the exact words to translate what is done in our culture to the universal language, like English, right? So there's something called ukugaba. So now when a person has a liver problem, like for example, either it is a burst liver or the liver is unclean, or he has a bladder problem, there is certain intoxicants in the bladder that he has tried different medicines, but they just don't work. If they go to a traditional healer, there's a medicine that is administered by using a porcupine quill. And to administer that medicine through a porcupine quill, which has been filled with certain herbs, which include aloe, which like aloe vera, but it's aloe. We call it intlaba. What they would do, they would administer that. It's almost like it is like acupuncture, but they will not administer the medicine at where the liver is at, or make him drink something for the liver. But the elder would go to your foot, would clean your foot. First, make you touch water with your foot, touch mud with your foot, and then clean it. After cleaning it, administer that medicine inside exactly in the part that you were shown by the reflexologist. And you ask yourself mystically, how did we know that before we received that kind of knowledge? And for us, it basically means that there are confluences in these kinds of medicines, in traditional medicines. Indigenous medicines, there are places, there is a point where they interconnect. And maybe I will get to that later, how they interconnect and how there is an opportunity and how it is not and how there's opportunity in there and also some dangers. If you do not mind, move to the next slide. And if you can go to the slide that says Introducing African Traditional Medicines.
Yes, thank you, Menzi. But here maybe Dr. Jennifer would like to elaborate more on this picture from another indigenous perspective or something.
Yes, absolutely. It's better if it's interactive like that.
No, thank you so much, Menzi, for what you're saying. There are always some overlaps, right? Because the understanding of the human body, as we go internally, all of these nature-based systems of medicine that are root cause oriented and have these various modalities, they also have an aspect of them that is spiritual and that is contemplation based. And it was typically in most of these systems within the process of contemplation that this knowledge was provided, right? So that's a very shared point of overlap that, quiet awareness, whether you call it meditation or contemplation, however we might refer to it. This was a way to receive knowledge about the human body, about healing, and about even in the clinical encounter between the patient and provider, or however you might, the community member and the healer. There's a relationship developed there that has energy, and there's information that flows, right? And so that's a super, I think, important thing that is shared across. I spent a year living in East Africa, so I have just some in Kenya, so I have just some, knowledge of some African healing systems. But the graph that you've provided is, it changes a little bit, but most systems have something like this, right? We also have tongue diagnosis where the primary organs of the body are also replicated on the tongue. You can also do pulse diagnosis where the organs of the body are formed through the pulses. So there's so many, areas where physiology is kind of concentrated into not a symbolic system, because I don't want to imply that it's non-material, but that it is sort of concentrated into something shorter that represents the whole, right? Where the part represents the whole. So I think it's beautiful what you're saying, and I really appreciate that you've started with this.
Thank you so much. Any other input?
No,
we move on?
Continue.
No, I mean from anybody else. No? All right, we can continue. But before we continue, I'd just like to say that, you know, what you're saying, it just reminded me that all is nature, really. You know, nature, when you are earthing, you are connecting with nature. And that microcosmic part of you that connects with nature connects to the macrocosmic, right? You know, so everything is kind of interrelated. I'd like to just add this little part. You know, when Dr. Mona was introducing herself, she was talking about her heritage as an Egyptian, you know, and she mentioned the fact that some of the stuff is not documented as much as it should be documented. And maybe she's beating up herself and she's asking other professors and everybody who's, okay, but where is it? Where is our knowledge? If we know it intuitively, but we also know it in parts. We may read it in a book that is not a medical book. Someone who's not a particular expert at that particular thing may have show you a little glimpse to say, oh, Egyptians did brain surgery. Oh, Kenyans and Congolese people did a little bit of heart surgery. But it won't be as detailed, right? But I think we are living at an opportune time right now, whereby a lot of these ancient knowledge systems, we are coming together so that we can be those people that can archive them, document them, and have resource centers that have this information in a package it. And then I will get to the contextual element a little bit later. Please, we can move on. Okay, this slide shows a sister friend of mine who is a healer from Zimbabwe. Her name is Mbuya Umba, and she is in her shrine, what is called Indumba or Isigodlo. Isigodlo is a word that basically means the king's chamber, the king or queen's chamber. Now, the word, I start here by showing, I'm using her basically as an example of a healer who has graduated, who has got her honors, who has got her masters, who has become a practitioner who can also heal other practitioners, right? So she's shown here wearing the color white. So there are different grades sometimes to the nguni, and many, not all of them, but many, because it's not a monolithic kind of thing. There are different grades to how a person moves from being an initiate to an adept to a, you know, someone who is intermediate phase, and to someone who is at a phase where you can refer them as a doctor of traditional medicine, right? But what is important here with the picture that I'm showing is how contextual metaphysics plays into this. Because what happens is you can be a healer taught in your mother's tradition, because what happens is, I'm not sure if I'm going to read that slide because I made the words very small. There are processes that help the initiate to tap into their great grandmother's healing modalities. Perhaps your great-great-grandmother was a person who could read bones, or who could read soil or sand, or who could read tea leaves, or who could read, or someone who was dealing in medicine, in herbs. They would go into the forest, or they will plant medicines, and they will. So you get initiated into that part, and then a little bit later, once you've graduated, there are certain signs that show that you've graduated. Then you can move into your great-great-grandfather's healing modalities. That is just on the spiritual level. And then you move on to a level where you are actually learning the science of how this is actually really being done. So these different grades are important, because what you are learning is how to humble yourself to something that you cannot even explain, right? So what Mbeumba is doing here in this particular picture, she is kneeling before a shrine. You won't see the other parts of the shrine for respect, but also the picture is like this. She's kneeling. She's got two smoking pipes: the smoking pipe of her grandmother and the smoking pipe of her grandfather. They are represented there, and there are other elements. And I'm summarizing this. All the different elements basically represent. I said in the other slide that it represents your epigenetic kind of like memory, right? and also the connection and the honoring of those ancestors that have chosen to come back. They don't come back as ghosts or any kind of mystical something like that, but they are living in you. So what you are basically doing is activating on the atomic level through prayer, through fasting, through certain rituals. You are actually activating something that is already in you because you come from that particular lineage. So I'm moving from that picture to this other one now. I need to make this bigger for myself so that I can see what I'm reading, because I want actually to read. Mona, can you read what's in the middle with the contextual so that I can, and then I will explain why I have that particular picture.
Yes.
Because I can't read it.
Okay. Whenever you doubt yourself, remember that your ancestors collectively sat at the feet of the tree of life, praying for your existence. This is from the Academy for Contextual Metaphysics.
Yes, so I'm moving now to why certain institutions are important. There's the traditional institution where you get gobelas. Gobela is like a master or a guide or a teacher. The gobela basically gives you the instructions. Can let me put it like this, because this is very important. The sequence is important. You dream about things that you cannot explain, and no one can explain them. Doctors, pastors, anybody on the secular level cannot explain what you are dreaming. So after you go through that dreaming, you go through, sometimes it happens simultaneously, a sickness. And that sickness can only be cured by a specific practitioner. And sometimes you have to travel across the country, sometimes across your own province, to find that particular healer who will actually help you to tap in to the gift that is being raised within you. I won't go deeply into why that sickness happens. I think there's a slide where I explain it even further. But what has happened now in Southern Africa, there's been a surge after 1994, after the advent of the democratic dispensation. What has happened is, especially even after year 2000, to be specific, Y2K, there's been a surge of people embracing the calling of being traditional healers. Now, that comes with its pros and cons too. There's a whole lot of charlatans that also come and they pretend that they know something, yet they don't, and a whole lot of people are led astray. Some pretend to be having the sickness, some pretend to be having gone through initiation, some pretend to, so a whole lot of things happen. So what me and some of my comrades did, who have gone to school, who have gone to universities, and or who are professionals in a different field, what we did, we got together and said, let's form an institution that can help not just form standards or some kind of regulates, because the regulation is done by government. There are institutions that are national institutions that are meant for policy, standardization, patents, and all those kinds of things. But on the ground level, we decided we need to have an institution or an organization that takes care of healers' needs from the ground up, not just from the top level down, but from the ground up. So a lot of us are researchers, a lot of us are scholars in different ways. Others are poets, others are engineers, others are lawyers, others are graphic designers, people from multiple disciplines. But what connected us is that we all are either dreamers, or we all have this calling of being healers in some way or the other. So we decided, let's use the skills that we've learned from the university to form something called the Academy for Contextual Metaphysics. And we call it that. I noticed a note there for me. But just to say, the Academy for Contextual Metaphysics is similar to another institution that we formed called Ikambi Natural Healing, which does something else. But the Academy, to be specific, basically nurtures the healers and makes sure that they receive the right guidance, because we're living in an urban area where a lot of people that have this calling to become healers do not have proper guides. The urban setting, the ghetto setting, shacks, and all these kind of urban situations, they open people who have potential greatness into a whole lot of dangers. Please move to the next slide. I will not go into this one because it talks about the same thing, about ancestral healing and all that. I'd like to speak about somebody, Ntate Mayeng. I really want to make my screen a little bit bigger. Let me just do this. Okay, yeah, it's fine now. I'm good. I'm not going to ask anybody to read for me. So in the work that we do, also please mind, there are traditional healers who do not like to be called traditional healers. They have different terms. Some are actual doctors. They've studied different kinds of medicine, but they just do not like the word traditional because somehow the word traditional has a history that is mired in superstition. There's a whole lot of superstitions that come from the colonial era. We call them colonial hang-ups. You know, sometimes traditional healing is mistaken for what is it called? Witchcraft. That word, that dreaded word, witchcraft. You know, some people embrace, I think in Europe, there's a big embracing of words like witch. People can do Wicca, they can do this, they can do and that. But here in Africa, especially in Southern Africa, with a lot of what I call Abrahamic religions and Christianity to be specific, there is still a heavy stereotyping of somebody who says that they are practicing traditional religion or traditional spirituality. So one of the elders, Mkhulu Mayeng, is a case that I wanted to cite in this presentation because Mkhulu Mayeng is he's actually in this picture, you find Mkhulu Ntlavana, who was the medicine man for the king of Eswatini. He's in the middle. He formed something called the Traditional Healers Organization. These three men that are in this picture were in the 70s, yeah, 70s and 80s, were some of the first people. I think they're in a conference here in the US. They were some of the first people that tried to bring some modes of respect to the traditional healing space by organizing it, offering certificates, giving certain kind of principled standardization and kind of organizing the traditional healing space. But Mkhulu Mayeng is one of the first people that said, no, I'm not a traditional healer, I'm a cultural doctor, right? So the terms are very important. But with those words, when he used those words, I'm aware also of time, he started looking at the problems, troubleshooting kind of like problems such as patenting. Like that's what the book on the right. I'm not going to delve into the book, but the book on the right with the leopard emerging there speaks about the dangers of patenting some of the works, of some of the methods and modalities of healing. Let's say, for example, someone comes to you and says, oh, you have a cure for cancer, or you have a cure for very difficult diseases like cancer or lupus. Or
Menzi, we lost you. Please check your audio. Menzi? So we can have any comments or questions until Menzi comes back. So any comments on what Menzi is mentioning? Yeah, we will take sort of a break for any question. Menzi.
Oh, the sound went away. The sound went away. I'm so sorry about that. I did say it's if it's not the camera, it's the sound. But anyway, I'm gonna try. Can we move? I was saying that Mkhulu Mayeng focused on the issue of patenting and the dangers of patenting. So he was going around the country, teaching people about how to deal with patenting, how to protect, what is so-called intellectual property. But the trouble with the issue of intellectual property when it comes to traditional healing was that some of these things that we call intellectual property is not the intellectual property of individuals. It is actually knowledge that is open and available to everybody, or at least to the ones who are initiated into a particular order of healing. So that's what I was saying when I think the sound went out. And I don't want to dwell too much in it. So the book on the right basically speaks about the dangers of patenting, how different medicines have been stolen and repackaged and resold to the people at exorbitant prices, or they've been repurposed and brought back not looking even familiar to the people that have practiced them for a long time. We can please move on to the next slide. So so this one, I want to just quote him, Mkulu, Dr. Mayeng here. And I was complaining to Dr. Mona actually that it is very difficult to actually speak to Mkulu because he shares a lot of information, but it is not always in an orderly fashion. Now, Mkulu Mayeng is writing a book. You know, he was one of the gentlemen on the right who was on that picture in the 1980s. I said he was one of the people that did a lot of work in organizing traditional medicine into systems and actually finding even scientific names for some of the things that I was saying earlier. They have African names that are very difficult to translate. So he was one of the people that did that. So he's writing a book at the moment, but one of the books that he recommended to me as I started speaking to him, I'm kind of like his apprentice these days. Even though he's very ill these days, he's quite old, and he had some accidents in the recent past. One of the books that he recommended to me, he said, in the absence of my book, which you are helping me to publish, I'm helping him to publish. This is the book that I would highly recommend. It's called African Indigenous Medical Knowledge and Human Health, Research, Development, and Delivery, written by Charles Wembebe. So I highly recommend it. Let me just leave it there, and I won't dwell too much on that. I'll quote what Mkulu said to me this morning when I said, Mkulu, but I need your bio. I've been waiting for your bio for the past 5 days. I want to use your words to speak about you, not just my own words, because if I use my own words, I can speak forever. So he's just basically wrote this to me. It's not even a bio, but I want to quote it. Quote, this is what I call cultural group therapy, Intlombe. Now, Intlombe is what he's speaking about is a group therapy where people dance together, sing together, chant together, and hum together, and actually do something called Intlombe, which is this. You make certain kind of noises to invoke a certain spiritual principle so that you can actually heal. So when many people from the community are participating in emotional healing, and he emphasizes this emotional healing a lot because he says that our communities, they have a lot of healing powers within them, but emotionally they are scarred. So you need to deal with the psychological healing, then you need to deal with the emotional, the traumatic healing first, before you even get to the body. He is big on the fact that you need to heal the emotional parts of the person, because it is not, he always says, it's not the medicine that heals, it is yourself that heals yourself, but the medicine assists you. So that's one of the things. I describe cultural healing in the book Moholongwana, which is the upcoming book, that presents the conceptual model of the indigenous South African traditional healing discipline and the utilization of competency at the 10 stages of the cycle of indigenous South African traditional healing. And as I close this particular part, and I think I've got probably 3 minutes now left, I want to just elucidate a bit about those 10 stages that he talks about. Some of them I already mentioned when people are going through an initiation. But some of the 10 stages that are very important, I'll just mention 3. Mkulu mentions the mental part. That on a psychological level, there is no one who needs to be more sober than a traditional healer. You need to be sober spiritually, you need to be sober emotionally, and you need to be sober. He says you need to have physical sobriety. What he means by physical sobriety, when he explains it to me, is that you need to eat healthy. You know, it is a famous thing when people say, eat the rainbow. He says to me that, you know, most in Southern Africa, people say, oh, it's a black thing, or African people love meat. Mkulu says, yes, we love meat, but meat is 2% of our diet. We should strive, he emphasizes this even to me, we should strive to eat more natural, organic, and non-meat products. In our diet, we must observe that. And nobody must do that more than the healer so that they can pass it on to the community. Please, next slide. I think I've got no more minutes. And then one of those modes, out of those 10 modes, music is highly highly recommended. These are some of the traditional instruments. Now, I need to say a lot of natural principles like water, fire, earth, the ether, the sky. So the instruments, when you're playing the instrument, you're not only playing it for your senses, you are playing it in order to harmonize with the rippling of the water. The mbira, for example, is a Zimbabwean instrument that sounds like water when you hear it play. It heals people, especially people that have mental health issues or psychological, different kinds of psychological issues. The mbira, which is a water instrument, is very pivotal in that. But for women, womb issues, menstrual issues, issues to do with pregnancies, there's an instrument called umakweyana, which is at the bottom there, made with a god. But I won't go too deeply. But not, and you can move to the next slide. But nothing in African spirituality and healing is more important than the drum. I have to emphasize that the drum is actually, we look at the drum as a living person. So this map basically shows, it says surviving spiritual power centers of resistance. It says Black Gods Matter, but I won't go too deeply into that. But what it basically speaks about, this particular map, and I won't dwell too much in it, it basically speaks about the issue of the fact that there are certain names that we call the Almighty. There are certain names that we call also other spirits that are beneath the Almighty, the helping spirits, some people call them the angels. So it's important in the stages of learning to be a healer to understand what those names in your region mean, because the names are codes. When you invoke those names, it's like opening up of certain portals. But I won't get into this. It's a subject that requires its own time. It's huge. Yeah, but please move to the next slide. Okay, yeah. Here, we cannot be MRN and speak about traditional health and all these things without touching on planetary health. So I felt that we need to touch on planetary health because African indigenous healing, especially in Southern Africa, is very holistic also. I know it sounds like redundant. People say that all the time. But we do not speak of healing an individual. An individual heals only if conditions are created also around them that promote that healing. So I'm just going to read this one so that I don't waste too much time because I can go on. There have been many attempts at instilling healthier environmental economic principles in the world. Much of these approaches to sustain the Earth's well-being have been well-intentioned yet ill-advised. Like what I mentioned before, that certain things are top-down instead of from the bottom up. Labels or terms of reference come and go from pseudo-sustainability, I call it pseudo, but we can talk about that later, zero waste, to regenerative, to disruptive, and very politically or dogmatically charged ideological frameworks. We can move to the next slide. I can explain maybe when we have one conversation. I'm a member of an institute called the Institute of Africology, which basically is an interdisciplinary approach to learning about African history, about African solutions to everything, right? So I look at Africology and planetary health as something, as two sides of the same coin, basically. So only until the advent of planetary health did a truly contextual, sound approach to holistic well-being emerge. What makes planetary health more transdisciplinary and truly sustainable is its progressive inclusivity. It's not exclusive. It's not like, oh, only those people do that. It embraces people, the pluriversity, the global context, and global cohesion. Never before have global South approaches to healing, meaning-making, and restorative justice been so mainstreamed. We can go on. Please turn to the next slide. Sorry if I sound like I'm rushing. I am in a bit, but I'd like us to actually go through these slides. So planetary health considers the interconnectedness of human health and the entire ecosystem, right? Africology is about the foregrounding of African ways, including holistic medicines and healthy communal lifestyles, which I've already mentioned. Merging the two improves collaboration and shared knowledge. That's what the title of our discussion is about. Please remind me again, that that working together, I forgot the name. The foregrounding of Africa, excuse me?
coexistence?
Yeah, coexistence, but there's another term, but I'll remember it later. The foregrounding of Africology at academic, mass media, as well as community levels comes and offers both opportunities and dangers. And so I named some of the opportunities here. Access to global markets for African medical practitioners, global and cultural doctors and content makers. Introduction of innovative contextual and holistic healthcare systems to complement and augment conventional or biomedical forms. Fostering healthier relationships between humans and the planet. I already said, planetary health is pivotal at this time. Please to the next slide. I'm hoping there's only 2 more slides left. So the unintended consequences are the possible dangers of One Health system and openness in conventional medical practices. I've already mentioned the issue of patenting and intellectual property, how it doesn't fit clearly in the way we approach medicine and healing, because we also believe as Africans that each household should have a healer within that household. It does not mean that everyone must go to a particular specialist. There are certain things that we are going to doctors for. I'm not saying doctors are not important, but we go to doctors sometimes over things that we can solve at home within a space of a few days. So data privacy is compromised when less affluent citizens share their techniques and sacred practices on the open market. I'm talking about the less affluent because their stuff gets stolen and then it's being sold by so-called big pharma. Inequalities in access to credit and acknowledgements, remuneration and recognition. This is tied to the first point due to the issues of intellectual property, patents, and all that what I've mentioned already. So commercialization of indigenous knowledge production. This poses a threat when cultural doctors begin to compete, because we're not supposed to be competing, we're supposed to be complementing each other. So we compete at global markets and we compete for prestige instead of communal well-being. The next slide, please, if there is one. I've forgotten even my slides. So maybe these are some of the resources that are available. Did I put them, or did I even send them to you eventually, or I didn't? Only the book. You can move on to the next one. I can speak about the resources, but maybe I'd like to pause right now and open the floor to everybody. Excuse me, please.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Rushing through. In one of my earlier slides, I'm just going to say this. In one of my earlier slides, I was saying that it is a daunting task to speak about African traditional healing when it is a process of hundreds of thousands of years. You know, I was going to go into the nitty-gritty of which medicines are used during the rituals, which medicines are used once you've graduated, which medicines are used once you are actually practicing, and which ones are good for children, which ones are good for, you know, there are all these different grades. But we cannot go, with limited time, we cannot go step by step into all those things. Only to say that, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Menzi. Thank you so much for that brilliant presentation. It's actually insightful, so much enlightening and captivating. So in order for us to be faster with our time, I just want to chip in from the perspective of trying to strike a balance between preserving the integrity of the indigenous knowledge and even leveraging on the scientific rigor of conventional medicine. So I just want to talk about the unintended consequences that you showed in your last slide.
Yes.
So if I'm to say from the perspective of conventional medicines, you made mention of the fact that there's an issue with, I think you made mention, the first point was talking about the dangers of One Health system and openness. But for me, I would say that One Health system, it's One Health system as an holistic concept. It actually give room for privacy and intellectual properties, like protections is often paramount, and especially when integrating traditional knowledge. So another thing that I want to say in that regard is that conventional medicine can even contribute more by establishing a framework. I don't know, maybe you know about the Nagoya Protocol, and because Nagoya Protocols, I'm going to be sharing the link for the articles. It's an actual article that was the publication of the United Nations Universities that actually discusses the legal frameworks that surrounds the protection of indigenous knowledge, focusing on the on the fair and even equitable sharing of benefits arising from the use of genetic resources or indigenous resources. So these particular Nagoya protocols actually gave room for the thriving of traditional and indigenous knowledge, and even protecting their intellectual properties. So I'm talking about the second point, which talks about the data privacy is compromised, which I would say to some certain extent, yes. To some certain extent, yes. But at the same time, when we look at it from the conventional perspective, there's a paper I'm going to share again after my talk in the chat box that actually talks about, that explores the intersection of traditional medicine and intellectual that talks about traditional medicine and intellectual property law. Like, it discusses more elaborate on the ethical consideration of integrating indigenous. All this actually protects traditional knowledge if it is truly if good ethical consideration can be put in place. It will actually enhances the integration of traditional medicine into global health system. So let me see if I can say something more on that. Okay, talking about commercialization. Yeah, I agree to some certain extent that commercialization can be a potential danger. I agree to that. But when we look at it from a wider perspective, if it is truly managed responsibly, traditional practitioners can actually benefit from a wider exposure, and even through financial support, and when good ethical considerations are enforced and considered. So the goal of conventional medicine is not to undermine even the communal well-being, but to as well as integrate valuable traditional knowledge into evidence-based practices. So the goal of conventional medicine, as is seen by all, is to promote public health, to improve public health. So if you look at it from the perspective of, say, that, okay, commercialization can be potentially dangerous, yes. But when you look at it from another perspective of reaching a wider audience, traditional individuals reaching a wider audience, we have to give it a second thought. Then I will talk about the last part, which talks about, so I have quite a number of publications there that I'm going to share regarding this, because there's another publication that talks about the integrating indigenous knowledge and conventional medicine and evidence-based approach, and this was a journal from the ethnopharmacology. So this article typically summarizes a case study of successful integration of indigenous knowledge into modern medical practices, while even safeguarding the communal interests, and of the indigenous people. And I think this is particular of interest to me, being a scientist, and being a pharmacist. Like, if we can actually look at this, if you look at the loopholes, look at the gray areas, and try to strike the balances, okay? Commercialization, possibility of danger of dangers of one health system, data privacy, and even to some extent, made mention here, the inequitable access to credit or knowledge and remuneration, which of course, because I could recall, I think last year I was opportune to witness a traditional practitioner session in my school, in which they invited the local traditional individuals, and it was a very big conference. And one of the major challenges they shared then was lack of proper remunerations, and conventional medicine use their basic knowledge. They use their knowledge to they commercialize their knowledge, their uniqueness with what they are doing. So, but one thing I understood is from them was if you're looking at it from the perspective of financial support, they need this financial support to be able to meet up with the global system, global standard. So all this, when you look at this, we need a proper integration of both conventional medicine and traditional medicine. And when we do this, we can achieve a more communal well-being. We can achieve a more holistic and integrative medicine that will actually be in favor of the global health. So I think I'm going to share some of the publications on especially the Nagoya Protocol, because I know that is one of the major. I don't know. Let me see. Okay, what I'm sharing. If you have anyone that wants to share one or two things, it's highly welcome.
Are you sharing in the chat, brother?
Yes, I'm doing that right now. So in Nagoya Protocol, so I'm sharing the traditional knowledge, which speaks in volume on data privacy and how traditional knowledge and intellectual properties can traditional knowledge, intellectual practice, and indigenous knowledge, the legal challenges, and even there's a proposed solution in that publication as well. So let me share that. Okay.
If I may, considering that I have another meeting I must run along to attend in a couple minutes. Thank you very much, Menzi, for this very wonderful presentation. Looking at this confluence of ancient and emerging medicine, it's always been a place of interest for me. And I very much appreciate, I know time did not do enough justice, or time did not allow you to do as much justice as you would have loved to do to the topic. There are still lots of things you would have wanted to touch upon. But permit me to ask a few questions in the context of today's presentation. And that's premised on the fact that, like I often say, if you're from the global south or if you're from Africa, to some extent, you must have partaken in one form of spiritual medicine at one time in your life or the other, either by virtue of your grandparents' interference or your parents' knowledge or community members' knowledge, a sick child in the community. And I'm looking at traditional medicine, I'm looking at Asian medicine, I'm looking at the emerging medicine in the African context. And I'm also trying to, put it in perspective with what Mr. Habib is saying. And I'm directing this question not only to you, Menzi, but also to Dr. Jennifer, whom we have with us in the house this evening. Let's look at it from an Afrocentric perspective. What do you think are actually the militating factors that is undermining the development of traditional medicine in Africa? Because if we look at it holistically, there is nothing new in the modern medicine or the Western medicine that we very much have around us. What they've done is that they've been able to fine-tune, to box in the context of pharmacology. They've been able to fine-tune this knowledge. They've been able to pass it through some laboratory procedure, set it up in doses, and and say, okay, this is what in collaboration with medical doctors and other medical practitioners, we've come to the agreement that after extensive study, this is the dosage that is due for this kind of health condition. And so my question is, what is Africa lacking? Why can't we also modernize ancient knowledge?
Maybe Jennifer can go first.
Yeah, so I think, so for me personally, I don't believe there's a need to modernize. I believe there's a need to preserve and grow what were originally dynamic oral traditions and to create infrastructure which is protective by nature. Some of that infrastructure relates to some of the things that that were being discussed earlier around competencies, requirements for professional designations, scopes of practice. I mean, in the United States, a scope of practice is a thing that protects a profession. So we have to, because it has a legal standing. And so we need to be very careful about some of our indigenous systems of medicine and make sure that these things are codified so they're protected from co-optation by conventional biomedicine. I mean, one of the things that I think is important about these systems of medicine is that they not lose their values in terms of being tailored to the individual, having a collective component.
Yes.
A lot of that, we don't treat symptoms, we treat root causes. And we understand that the etiology of disease, at least in Ayurvedic medicine, it begins in the spirit and it funnels into the psycho-emotional body and then into the physical body. So by the time you have a physiological symptom, you've had a psycho-emotional imbalance, and prior to that, a spiritual imbalance. So when you understand the etiology of disease from that perspective, then you know that conventional biomedicine is missing a lot of the picture because everything is atomistic, it's reductionist, everything is based on an organ, and a diagnosis, which oftentimes is very, just shows such a minimal part of the picture. So, so I think in terms of plant medicine, it's very important to recognize that plants in most of these systems of medicine, plants are used as whole plants. They're not used the way that pharmacology tries to kind of manipulate them into extracts and things that can be patented. And herbalists know that the whole plant has a synergistic effect. It has a way to function in the body. When you keep the whole
Yes.
plant, you keep the intelligence of the plant. When you start dealing in extracts, you've broken the plant down into component parts that maybe now are lacking in some of their original intelligence. So I think we have to understand, the West, however you want to refer to, the imperial powers that have really created so much damage, they have also inflicted on the rest of the world an understanding of research, which is very problematic, which that it should happen in a laboratory and it should be a double-blind randomized control trial, which that's just a myth. That is not a gold standard for science. That's one type of science, which is very effective for certain types of investigations. But I am trained in whole systems research, which is really more appropriate for these disciplines because they understand that a treatment is multi-target and disease manifestation is multimodal. And so you go in and you look at the relationships across variables instead of trying to, squeeze it down to its smallest component part and said, A causes B. So that's something about research. And I think, we do have to be very careful to do everything we can. And I see this as a community, all of us who practice Indigenous and I understand what you're saying about the moniker traditional, but however we want to describe the community, though these systems of medicine differ, they're all sciences and they all have overlapping values. And so we need to come together and be, unity and diversity, see ourselves as, yes, distinct, right? But then also as from a values perspective, we come from a similar place. And in order to help one another and work together to protect these really medical sciences, from infiltration and co-optation, we have to come together. So that's, I think, an important thing for me as a really an activist scholar, that I'm very invested in preserving the authenticity and dignity of all of these systems and to preserve them, from the insult of toxic individualism, which is really creeping across our planet, right? So I think the last thing I'll say is just that I think we would be remiss not to mention the influence of capitalism on all of these systems. Capitalism is extractive by nature. It wants to take local knowledge systems, whatever they have to value, kind of sprinkle some language around and, say, done, we've tipped our hat to these sciences, but that is not what needs to happen.
What we're looking for, yes.
Right, we need to go very deeply and we need to see it as part of a larger social movement, right? A global social movement. Yes, for planetary health, but yes, also for a change in values. Yes, also to preserve traditional knowledge systems. And that can be writing them down, but it can be making sure that languages aren't lost, making sure that, biodiversity loss doesn't affect our medicinal plants, making sure our habitats are not destroyed. So there's so many pieces, but ultimately, all of these systems come from this place of biophilia, love of nature, love of the relationship between humans and nature. And so I think we need to use that as our foundational platform for how we come together.
I love that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And thank you to Samuel for being around. I know he has to go. So, but I think for me, your response was very much satisfactory. More than, because the only part I can emphasize is that we have to be activists. We cannot just be comfortable at our jobs or at our one function. It's okay, we are doing this. You have to be activists because the world is interconnected. That's why I use the word integral Africology. It's not about Africa alone. It's about how does Africa contribute to the rest of the world and how does the world contribute back, a give and take. Habib, sorry.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Do you have any other person with a question for Menzi or anyone with a addition, or suggestion, or a comment?
Dogotela. We call it Dogotela. That's what we say in Zulu for doctor.
Or you, Francoise, do you have any question?
Sponsor in. Excuse me a bit.
Oh, what about Yusuf? Oh, okay. Yes, can go ahead. Thank you.
No, I just want to congratulate you for taking us back to the roots and this deep resource that you had to bring together in this space today. And there are many things that we are really negligent of bringing it to the science that our traditions, our culture, our parents were doing, that we really neglect bringing it to the limelight like you did. So I want to congratulate you for the presentation. Thank you. I would like to hear you more and more and more and more. Thank you.
Of course. No, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay, so one further questions I would like to throw to Dr. Jennifer and my brother is that we talk about personalized medicine. So what do you think is, how do you think traditional medicine and conventional medicine can actually play a vital role in this?
I'm sorry, before I speak, can Francois?
Yes, I'm here.
Please pronounce your first name for me. I love the sounds that I am seeing, but I do not know how to pronounce.
The many consonants and the few
Yes,
vowels.
it is daunting. I want to learn. Please say it for me.
Francois?
No. The Nenju.
Yeah, Nenju. That's my father's name.
Oh, Nenju. Okay. I got you. No, thanks. If Habibullah, could you please rephrase your question? I didn't really fully get it. I was still stunned by the consonants.
That talks about personalized medicine.
Personalized or patenting?
Yes, personalized medicine. So how do you think what role can traditional medicine and conventional medicine play in personalized medicine?
Okay, I'm not sure. It's a term that I'm not. I think I've heard of. Maybe Jennifer, you know more about it. What do you mean by personalized? I know it sounds like it's a medical term, like, but personalized. You mean using medicine at home remedies, or what is that? Or is there a term for something else?
No, I think from my perspective, yeah, it's like one size, like rather than saying one size fits all, like trying to say that.
Oh yes, I get it.
You get it. Oh, thank you so much.
I get it. You see, there's a part there where I was speaking about contextual metaphysics, right? Which is an institute, an organization that I've been worked with. That the term contextual is very important because it does not take everybody as basically, even if all of us have been diagnosed with the flu, it does not mean that we will all need the same medicine, you know? So each and every context is important, not just on an individual level, but also at the environmental level. And also on I think some of the 10 principles that Ntate Mayeng was that I mentioned from Ntate Mayeng, Nkulu Mayeng, that the emotional state, the physical state, you know, the nutrition of the person matters as much as whatever symptoms that they are exhibiting at a particular time, right? So I think African medicine, I mean, I already mentioned that we have some kind of generalized term to say that, oh, natural medicine is holistic. But a lot of people don't really get to the nitty-gritty of what does that actually mean when you say it is holistic. Yes, I've mentioned the socio-economic level. Jennifer mentioned capitalism. You know, capitalism, I think we need a whole conference just to unpack the damage that capitalism has done, not just on the medicinal or whether it's traditional medicine, but what it has done even for doctors. You know, a whole lot of doctors in South Africa, the biomedical doctors, the ordinary mainstream doctors, are suffering. A whole lot of them are going through suicide. A lot of them are going through depression. There's a whole lot of things happening around them because a lot of the time, I'm not saying all the time, but a lot of the time, they're just not trained to integrate various aspects, to look at the world in a more panoramic view. You know, they just get taught to go, okay, for this particular thing, this is what you recommend, and the patient must go to this clinic, must go to this pharmacy, right? So basically, the doctor is suffering the same as the rest of the population. Doctors are basically being used to sell pharmaceuticals, basically. So there is an effect that is very debilitating to the psyche of ordinary doctors when they are actually being used in that way. And that is capitalism in itself. But just to come back to traditional or cultural medicine, we cannot emphasize the importance or the significance of spirit enough. It all begins in the spirit. In fact, even before a person, when a person is catching a particular ailment, before you get sick, there are signs. And these signs happen on an emotional level, they happen on a spiritual level, they happen on the dream level. You know, most people do not know how to actually identify something that is a spiritual ailment. So that is something that people have to get trained to identify, to say, hey, you know what, this person is fatigued. But is the fatigue because of what they are eating, or are they fatigued because of it's an onset of something else? So how do you arrest it at the spiritual and an emotional level before you even get to a full-blown disease, right? So there are ways of getting to that. We can, as I said, we can speak about which kind of medicines help in that aspect, but you can speak about medicines for a long time. But until you address the person's knowledge system, you have to make a person understand that what is the medicine doing with you, not just for you, you know? So it's the same also in the spiritual realm. A whole lot of people are begging God for things. You know, a whole lot of people are asking the creator to intervene in their in their private lives, you know, whereby the creator is actually asking you to participate as a holistic being in an environment so that there's health in general, you know. So that's I just want to make that very clear. So it's very important to integrate these things so that by the time you get to the medicinal part, the material part of the medicine, you've already taken care of the foundation, and the spiritual part is the foundation. Yes, Dr.
Thank you, Menzi. I would like to dash in after thanking everyone who contributed a very deep and thought-provoking discussion, actually. And I'd like that we broadening our perspectives even more. I wonder if you heard of prophetic medicine. This is another chapter that we also will discuss, and in our list of webinars, to talk about prophetic medicine, because it's a very you know, like practiced in the Middle East, in many of the Muslim countries. So we need also to tackle this sort of non-Western paradigm of medicine. And also, why not keep God in the center, you know, and ask God about maintaining our health and well-being in everything. So it's always, you know, good that we keep our gratefulness to our Creator, and to discover more about the term spiritual, what it really means, and underlying it, what we need to discover even more. So I'll now open the floor. Maybe Tajuddin Yusuf, you can also share your perspectives from a researcher of public health and microbiology, and let us know more about what you have in mind after this discussion. Yusuf,
Tajuddin is
yes.
available.
Please, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening from Nigeria. And it's a nice conversation, nice discussion. And thanks to everyone for having contributed towards this particular topic. Yes, it's really an interesting one. And that's a brilliant presentation. So one thing that I'll just say, like, I really enjoyed the conversation. I really like the conversation that surrounds it. But then there was this particular point in the slide that I really find I don't really agree with. Like, I think in the aspects of the problem with the One Health, I think these holistic approaches, they were all implemented so that for us to be able to tackle the global challenges that we are facing from different angles. While planetary health has its own particular goal of addressing the health threats. Basically, the environmental and health threats, how human health is connected with the environmental health. The One Health approach addresses this from the three perspectives: the environment, the health, and then the human health and the environmental health. And then we also have eco health. And in one of our papers that we published, on arboviruses, we try to like dispel this myth that surrounds you prioritizing a particular approach over another. So we try to like highlight the advantage of each of these approach and why these three approaches have the same things in common, just to address the global health threats. So I think I don't have the article here. I will have shared it here. So we try to look at the three approaches and then we'll discuss about it. So basically, so I share the link in the chat. So please, you can actually check it up. It's one of our publications on AMR, traditional medicine, and the role of planetary health. So now I'll just talk briefly on the critical issues that affect us all, and yes, one of the central key of today's discussion, which is antimicrobial resistance and the need for new medicine, like so the need to discover new medicine to address the challenges of AMR. So as an early career researcher and as an early career researcher, so I will just say that that was focused on planetary health. So we are facing the global crisis of AMR, and there's no need to be reiterating it again. We all know that AMR is responsible for about 700,000 deaths annually due to overuse and misuse of antibiotics, which is driving the resistance. But then, just like we all know, it's not a new thing to us that it's not just a human health issue. It affects the ecosystem and also affects the environment. And this is why we need the planetary health approach, or basically any other approach. But for us here, we are concerned with the planetary health approach. So because it's what we are actually advocating for here. So, and then we know that traditional medicine is actually a valuable resource for human care. So, and has been used, it has been used by, I think, approximately like 80% of the global population. So, using of natural products and then through the holistic approaches. So, I felt that I think by considering the traditional medicine, we can actually find a solution to this AMR. And here in Africa, we know that Africa is the hotspot for biodiversity. We know we have this flourishing biodiversity and we have these amazing natural products that if we exploit, then there are potential for antimicrobials. So, and but then how can traditional medicine help? First, from research perspective, I think the emphasis on traditional medicine, on prevention and natural medicine is actually a huge one, particularly for us in Africa, because it can actually reduce antibiotic use. And then the holistic approaches that we are clamoring for can address the underlying health issues of these health issues that is driving the demand for antibiotics. So if we integrate traditional medicine into the mainstream healthcare, I think we are on the path to promoting sustainability, and then we will definitely address the issue of AMR to a certain extent. So look at it, for example. I think the use of this Ayurvedic medicine use certain antimicrobial plants, such as all these turmeric names. Even in traditional Islamic belief, there are some certain herbs that can be used, and some of these herbs does not have any side effects. Like, you can actually use it, and it kills some of these remedies that we are battling in today's world. So I think Dr. Muna is trying to mention some of these she was trying to drive a conversation surrounding that. But then, so we also learn about the traditional Chinese medicine, which actually emphasizes the need to balance the gut microbiota. I think we have a paper on that too. So some of these cases actually demonstrate traditional medicine's potential to address AMR without the need to create any further resistance. So although there are challenges, we know that we need to regulate and standardize, then integrate this traditional medicine into the mainstream healthcare. So, but then there are so many opportunities as well. And some of these opportunities include the need for us to collaborate. So we know we need to collaborate with other researchers. Like we need to engage in collaborative research and avoid that silo thinking. Like, we need many hands on deck, and we don't need to address some of this problem by leveraging the one-size-fits-all approach. So we need all hands on the table. If you are a pharmacist, if you are a traditional healer, right, public health expertise, and medical doctor, we can always work together to bring our various perspectives and expertise on board and try to do something that will be sustainable for our future and then for our health. So, and I also think in terms of education and policy development, it can also help us to harness the medicine, the traditional medicine potential, right? So, because I don't have much time, so I only have 5 minutes, and I'm not sure if I've even exceeded that. So I'll just say, in terms to combat AMR, leveraging the planetary health approach, we need to focus on incorporating traditional medicine sustainable solution, right? So, and this can be possible through a collaborative approach, and then collaborative research and all. So we can work together to address this critical issue. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I don't know if you have any final thoughts. Thanks to everyone who has contributed to, closing thoughts. Do you have any closing thoughts? Thanks to everyone who has contributed to this discussion. It's actually a privilege to have everyone here. Thanks for your time. Thanks to Dr. Jennifer. Thanks to our speaker, Menzi, for that insightful talk and enlightening talk. I appreciate each and every one of us for taking our time to attend this session. Do we have any final closing thoughts?
I have just final closing thoughts. I finally received the bio of this man. It's 3 lines exactly. The elder I was speaking about. He says a short resume about me. Ex-teacher, cultural doctor, did research in the USA and SA, South Africa, in steroids and medical plants, packaged, researched medicinal plants that are effective in dealing with diabetes type 2 and high blood pressure. In other words, he is giving us 2% of his bio. again, but this is the reason. So part of my closing thoughts as I'm reading Pulumayek's bio is that there's my biggest concern, besides environmental degradation, over-harvesting, lack of biodiversity, and all those environmental issues. My greatest concern is the preservation of this wisdom, the wisdom in terms of the knowledge of how these herbs are used, because sometimes you can have access to every single medicine that is necessary. But if we do not have the knowledge and the wisdom of the elders preserved in a proper way, in a way that our children and their children's children can access it, then we have really been, we haven't done our work. So my closing thoughts are that can we please do our best? I know we are trying. I know we are doing all we can. Can we do more in terms of not just publishing in academic spaces, which is very important, but let's also publish in the mass media. Let's also publish in different ways, in the cloud, in the algorithms. Save this information in such a way that the same way that they are saving the seeds, there's a seed bank somewhere in I don't know, I think it's in Denmark or somewhere, where they are saving actual food seeds. You've heard about that bank. So I'm hoping, I know it's kind of like a Noah's Ark type of.
More like an aberrant. We've lost your audio, Menzi. Yeah, cannot hear you. We can't hear you. Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. Dr. Jennifer, do you have any final thoughts?
Sure, I can say a couple things. I mean, I wanted to answer your question about personalized medicine. I mean, I think what the traditional systems of medicine have to offer is that, you know, they're humoral systems. A lot of them are based in natural elements. So they're 5-element systems of medicine or different numbers of elements. But Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, you know, are based in nature in the 5 elements. And the 5 elements are reflected in the human body. And when we use that type of constitutional approach, we're much more able to personalize the medicine to the individual. But it's so important that that is not co-opted by the medical mainstream. Currently, what is seen as personalized medicine is like, you know, hundreds of laboratory tests, and then they give you suggestions about supplements and micronutrients, and that's kind of personalized medicine. But there's very little evidence for that type of approach. I think even these gut microbiota analyses, they're very complex, but there's the literature does not demonstrate that the suggestions are necessarily the clinical suggestions that they generate are necessarily very effective. So I think we have to really watch the science and be careful how we think about that. So, and I wanted to talk about what Menzi said about, you know, the traditional systems of medicine and indigenous systems of medicine, being able to think about disease manifestation in this different way. In Ayurveda, we have 7 stages of disease, and 3 of them are before you would ever apply a disease label. So they're premonitory signs and symptoms. And so that's how we really are strong in the areas of prevention and health promotion, something that I think we can maximize. And I just want to mention that all of these systems of medicine are traditionally primary care systems of medicine. And that is very important to say repeatedly, because I think the desire of conventional Western biomedicine would be to just pull little pieces of these sciences under their umbrella, instead of preserving the whole sciences as primary care systems. So when we go into a mode of preservation and protection of knowledge systems, we need to approach it. This is a primary care system of medicine. We have a full scope of practice. And the last thing I'll say is just, again, Menzi mentioned, you know, doctors are under stress, and it is different across the globe, our healthcare systems, but they are, you know, all suffering to some degree from burdens that they are not equipped to tolerate. In the United States, we have for-profit medicine. And in the past, let's say 20 years, our entire healthcare system, large medical practices, hospital systems, physician practices have been bought out by private equity and venture capital. So it literally means now, legally, that the goal of a healthcare system is return to investors rather than patient outcomes. And that is a disastrous state of affairs for any kind of healthcare system. So that is a moral injury to physicians. They can no longer do their job in a meaningful way. In the United States, we have 15-minute clinical encounters. You cannot heal people in 15 minutes. And so, you know, as much as we may practice different sciences, we are all together in feeling, you know, the pain and struggle of these ineffectual healthcare systems that are largely responding to a desire for profit instead of treating patients. So I think we just need to keep that in mind.
And I'd like to apologize about the sound there, my brothers and sisters.
It's okay.
I just got the last end of Jennifer's speech.
Okay.
Conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Do you still want to say one sentence or two? We round it up?
No, just the last sentence. What I was saying was basically, but the thing is, you know, I would like to have a repeat with Jennifer being the main speaker, because I am so, everything she's saying, she's articulating the things that I care about in so many ways. But I'd like to invite some doctors that some friends who are doctors here in South Africa for that particular talk. So nudge, Dr. Mona, please let's work on that. And Jennifer can find something in her schedule, and we can do this. I would really like to listen to you more, because there's so much to engage on. But all I was saying is that preservation, cultural preservation, that is very important. I'd like to end with a quote, though, also from ancient Egypt, from Ptahhotep. It was a disciple of Ptahhotep, one of the scribes. I think it was in the 22nd dynasty in Kemet, Egypt. He says he's talking to his son. It's one of the old books. He's talking to his son the son wants to go into the profession of woodwork, to do woodwork, carpentry. But the father is saying, no, but it will benefit so many more people. I'm paraphrasing. It would benefit so many more people if you could go into the profession of being a scribe, like my grandfather and your great-grandfather and your because what we are doing is preserving a time. We are preserving something in time, so that generations long after we are gone can remember what we did. It's something that Ptahhotep said. I'm paraphrasing it. I'm not saying it exactly as it wrote it. But he was basically an elder speaking to his son to say that not to control what you want to do, what your passion is, but in whatever you are doing, make sure that the skill is preserved so that it can be remembered time immemorial.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Menzi, for that wonderful talk. Thank you so much, Dr. Jennifer, for the wonderful contributions, suggestions, and comments. Yusuf, thank you so much for your contribution as well, and everyone who attended this session. I'm very happy. I'm glad that it was actually a very insightful and enlightening session. So I sent our social media. Kindly follow us on X, and I think we also have mentoring sign as well on LinkedIn as well. Please kindly follow us. I said by Dr. Mona earlier that we're still trying to work on our website, so it's going to be in the next couple of days to week. I think it should start working, so we can actually share our website as well through the email. So also follow up with our activities through Gmail. We're going to send some of our activities for the remaining part of the year, inshallah. So just kindly follow up with our activities. So once again, thank you all for attending this session. We really, really, really appreciate it. Dr. Mona, do you have any final thing to say before we close it? Okay.
We also have an active page on the Nova Integration Hub. And I posted before the book that you mentioned, Menzi, Ptahhotep, the oldest book in the world, they say that. And even there is a very interesting conversation between a person and his soul, which is truly a spiritual talk. It's a very old one. So with that, I would like to thank you all for being in that webinar of today, and hope to meet you soon in the next month, inshallah. So take great care of you, and thank you for joining. Bye.